Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm going to be reviewing RG Veda. Now, before I start discussing, RG Veda, there's a couple of things I need to just simply quickly discuss, and all of them have to do with, the authors of this manga, Clamp. Now, if you're watching this video and you're going, who the hell are Clamp? Clamp are a mangaka group in Japan. There are 4 women in the group. And they've drawn a lot of very popular and influential manga over the years. I think it's getting close to... Actually, no, it is over 25 years now. They've been doing manga for 25 years. Among my favourite works from them are Cardcaptor Sakura and Chobits. Definitely, I would highly recommend people check out those 2 titles if you have not already. Other titles they've done, Clover, Angelic Lair, Legal Drug, and one of my least favourite manga I've ever read, Clamp School Defenders Ducleon. That is a horrendous manga. But basically, in general, I like their works a lot, and I love their, artwork. Their artwork is absolutely breathtaking. But anyway, why would I give so much information about them right now? Well, it's because RG Veda has a very special place in their catalogue, and I'm not sure if you guys can read the very top of it, but if you can't, it says Clamp's debut manga. So this is the very first professional work they ever did. Now, when they say debut manga, that's not strictly true. They were a doujinshi group before, doujinshi being, fan manga, etc., etc. But from the professional point of their career, I should say, this is the very first work. So, very important place in their whole catalogue. But anyway, that's enough about, the kind of history of this manga, what is it about? Basically, it's a fantasy. It's set in the world of Tenkai, and we find out that the previous king who ruled all of Tenkai has been overthrown and replaced by this commander called Taisha Kuten. And over the course of 300 years, Taisha Kuten has ruled Tenkai with an iron fist. And after about 300 years, this stargazer that he's been keeping imprisoned, Kuyo, has escaped. And he, gives the duty of killing her to one of his generals, Yasha, which is this character right here. And Yasha comes across her, he finds her, and she gives him a prophecy, which speaks of, a boy, that he will find a child who, from a, extinct tribe, that this child will gather, 6 stars, and they will overthrow Taisha Kuten, etc., etc. He does go find that child. I know he doesn't look like a child here, but that's actually his kind of adult form. It's a bit of a weird thing to called Asura. And Asura is from the Asura tribe, who used to be among the most powerful guardian warriors in all of Tenkai, but Taisha Kuten wiped them all out when he came into power. And so Yasha takes him home, takes care of him, but Taisha Kuten finds out that Asura is being, taken care of in the Yasha village, and he sends his armies to wipe out the village, which he succeeds in doing. And Yasha then decides to continue to take care of Asura and prepares to overthrow the king, Taisha Kuten. And that's how the story begins. And let's just say that the story is slightly problematic. Now, let's start off with my biggest gripe about this manga, and that is actually Volume 1 and Volume 10. Volume 1 being the very first volume, as you can imagine, and Volume 10 being the last. And my problem with those volumes in particular they are very exposition heavy. I mean, that first volume, they throw huge amounts of information at you, and a lot of it feels kind of superfluous, or at that point at least. It does, of course, become important over the course of the whole series, but it's all, thrown right at you, and it's a bit overwhelming. Clamp could have definitely have stretched that exposition out, over the course of the next 5 volumes and made it a much more easier read. Not quite as overwhelming and not quite as dull, to be honest, because as I'm sure most of you know, when you're being thrown lots and lots and lots of exposition, it can actually be quite boring. And that's kind of the same with the last volume. As I said, this series revolves around a prophecy. And as with a lot of prophecies, there is a whole bunch of kind of vague descriptions in the prophecy that have to do with, real events. That last volume, 10, chock full of it, characters explaining what parts of the prophecy are, important, like basically describe the events that are currently happening, etc., etc. And it's just kind of like characters talking for a lot of time, and it's just kind of very dull. As well as the ending being a bit, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's anticlimactic. It's certainly not one of the worst endings I've ever read in a manga, but I don't know, it just feels kind of underwhelming, I'll just say, for the ending. Now, beyond that, okay, so those are my biggest issues with this manga from a story perspective. Continuing on with the story, there are actually a lot of awesome action sequences. There's a lot of fighting in this series, and those action sequences are actually, decently well done. They are a decent length, so that we can actually, get engaged in the battle, but not so long that it drags out. Beautifully drawn. I'll talk about the artwork in a little while. And they're all highly relevant to the actual plot. Beyond that, there's some very nice kind of side stories that, are told as the series goes on. Definitely volumes 2 to 9 are a vast improvement over volumes 1 to 10, I will say that. In that they're of a much more leisurely pace, instead of the rushing that is in volumes 1 and 10. We get to find out more about characters, about their backgrounds, about the politics that are happening in Tenkai, etc., etc. And basically, yeah, I'll say that I can actually recommend volumes 2 to 9 pretty easily. They're not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but they are an engaging work. Now about the characters. Characters-wise, there are several important characters, introduced to us over the course of the manga. In particular, the 6 stars, of course those are important. But let's just simply talk about, the characters that are first introduced in the first volume that are important. So let's start off with Yasha and Asura, because really you can't talk about one without talking about the other. Basically, Yasha he started out as a leader for his tribe, for his village. But after Taishakuten has wiped out the village, he's kind of trying to figure out, his purpose in life as he follows this prophecy. And as time goes on, he kind of starts to realize that he develops a very fatherly relationship with Asura, which is a very sweet relationship, to be honest. It's very engaging, very nice, quite emotional. He's very clear-headed, and he's always, kind of thinking about, the correct path to go on. And in general, he's a very engaging lead character. I like him. Asura is, okay, first of all, I'll say Asura's relationship with Yasha is very nice. The father-son kind of relationship that develops between them is very emotional, very sweet, and it definitely does add a lot to the story. But he's one of those characters who, I don't know, he's kind of a little annoying. He goes up to people and he demands stuff from them. In particular, he demands food a lot. He's a very piggy eater. And really, he's cool in battle as well, I will say, because of the fact that, he has this sacred blood in him. But I wasn't surprised to find out, in the kind of, in the after volume sections from Clamp, that he was among the least popular characters in the series. Because he's not particularly engaging. So, from that perspective, that's problematic. But I will say that I like his relationship with Yasha a lot. And then I guess the only other character I'll discuss for the moment is Taishakuten. Taishakuten is a bit problematic. He is, the villain for the series, the antagonist. Having wiped out Yasha's tribe. But the interesting thing is that he is actually a very poor leader. He, basically, if anyone, offends him, threatens him, simply intimidates him, he'll wipe out their entire tribe. And you kind of have to wonder, how he's managed to rule Tenkai for the course of 300 years, given the fact that he is so unforgiving. Because, over the course of, and while it seems to be less than a year, he wipes out several tribes, and you know, infuriates, you know, several important people, you know, generals, etc., etc. And you kind of have to wonder, you know, like, wouldn't you think that, you know, within at least 50 years of his rule, that all of Tenkai would be pretty much wiped out and, you know, unruly. I never found him to be, you know, a serious, you know, logical threat. So from that perspective, I found that quite disappointing. Now, I will say that what I did find quite impressive is how developed the artwork is in this series, considering it was their debut professional work. Now, of course, they had done doujinshi beforehand, Clamp, you know, so that makes sense in how, you know, they're very skilled already, you know, being able to draw characters and, you know, character designs, detail, etc., etc. And let me go into a bit more detail on that. Okay, basically the first volume is okay in artwork, you know, it's pretty good. But it's nothing exceptional, particularly in comparison to their later works. But by, you know, for example, Volume 5, the artwork has gotten to the point where it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, just simply look at the composition of the panel work on those two pages, as well as the character design and the shading, as well as detail. It's just absolutely beautiful. The panel arrangement is exactly what I like. You know, it's, you know, innovative. It's, you know, it's not afraid to be, you know, other than rectangles. You know, rectangular paneling and squares are always kind of boring to me. And, you know, they actually fade into each other a lot, which is really nice. And gives a real sense of dynamism, particularly to the more emotional aspect of the story. Not only that, character designs are absolutely beautiful from this. You know, they have that elongated look that are very common with all Clamp works. And there's a great level of detail, you know, in their hair, in their eyes, etc., etc. A little messy at points, I will say. In particular, what I found was that there can be panels where it's hard to tell what the hell is happening. You know, like there might be a bit in a battle where, you know, characters are charging up and they're attacking each other, and you kind of turn the page and you're kind of looking at this panel and kind of going, what is happening? You know, I can't see what's happening. And you move on to the next part and, you know, you're kind of wondering, oh, so, like, I guess that's what happened. So from that perspective, it's easy to tell that this was, you know, them still getting used to the actual, you know, professionalism of manga drawing. But from an artistic perspective, it's definitely an impressive work. And it's something that improves all the way to the end. You know, Volume 10, I will say, as iffy as the story is in Volume 10, it's among the most beautiful looking in all of, you know, the series. And I guess the final thing I will point out is Tokyopop's treatment of the series, which I will say is not that good. First of all is the translation. The translation in general is good, but there are a surprising number of errors in it. Like, one thing that I noticed is that every so often they'll actually call Asura as she. Now, Asura, as girly as Asura looks, Asura is a he. And I guess, I don't know, the translator must have occasionally looked at Asura and gone, oh, it's a she, so he drew it in and no one corrected it. You know, there was no proofreading done through it. So from that perspective, it's very annoying in that how inconsistent that was. That was the part of the translation that leapt out at me most. I remember seeing a couple of other grammatical errors here and there. But, you know, beyond that isn't too annoying, the translation. What's really annoying now, and this annoys the hell out of me every time I see it in a translated manga, untranslated sound effects. Like, let me just get you an example of that. Here, how about the drawing of the sword? Take a look. We see, you know, the katakana there, katakana sound effect, but there's no translation, there's no glossary, there's no, you know, subtitle under it, or anything to explain it. Now, of course, we can guess, you know, oh, it's shh, that kind of noise. But there are a lot of sound effects in this series which, of course, don't have real-world comparisons. And you're kind of looking at it and you kind of have to make up your own sound for it. Which definitely, you know, it's very kind of unprofessional, you know, to see that in a, you know, translated manga. So, you know, I was disappointed from that. And, you know, I would have thought that Tokyopop would have at least had the cop on to actually translate the sound effects. I mean, I think, you know, Legal Drug, I think they translated it. I don't know. I can't remember. But, in general, what do I think of RG Veda? RG Veda is definitely a significant work in Clamp's, you know, catalogue. And if you're a Clamp fan, you know, that's already, you know, sold a series for you. You're going to go, oh, I really want to try tracking down these volumes now because it's their debut work. But the story isn't nearly as well developed as many of their later works. You know, very sloppy, you know, first and 10th volume in terms of exposition. But there are some, you know, great action sequences. There's some emotional moments. There's a nice relationship between Yasha and Asura. And beautiful artwork with great panel arrangement. So overall, I would recommend this definitely to those who are Clamp fans. To those who aren't Clamp fans, I would say start off with, you know, Cardcaptor Sakura and Chobits, and if you're kind of like, oh, I kind of want to see how they began, pick up this series. But overall, it's kind of like, you know, I'm glad to have read it, but I can't imagine rereading it anytime soon. It's a decent series. That's it. And yeah, that's my review of RG Veda. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.